Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Lockaruba. I'm a manager with Third Stage Consulting Group. We're here today with another in our series of videos to walk through the concept of process mapping with you. Now, we know with our audience, we're going to have people with different levels of experience with this. So this is aimed to show a few things for you. Certainly, if you've never been involved in process mapping sessions, this will be good for you to get a rough idea of what it's about and to understand how different roles can interact in a session and some of the types of things you can draw out of it. So we're going to be using a very simple example here. So it's not one that's necessarily going to be as tied to some of the biggest gains you could get out of process mapping, but it should be one that's kind of familiar. The idea is just we're going to be going through the procurement process for ordering laptops in a small business. So we will be able to walk through what that process looks like. Hopefully it's relatable and you'll be able to see through the help of our participants how we would go about this process and some of the things we would draw out of it. So I'll introduce to you our two participants in this. So first of all, playing the role of the department head ordering laptops is Cameron Carpenter.
Hello, everybody.
And playing the role of our procurement manager is Adam Cheatham.
Hello.
Okay, so what we're going to do, I will start sharing my screen and we are going to be building a Visio process map on the fly. And there are a lot of tools out there you can use for something like this. Visio is a Microsoft tool that a lot of people are familiar with and have access to. So again, we're just going to be doing kind of a simple map here and walking through what a session like this might look like. So I've got this map up and now I'm going to shift into the mode of facilitating the session with our participants here. So where we like to start is to say, okay, so Cameron, we're talking about the process of procuring a laptop. This is going to start within the business area. So we want to identify what's the event that triggers this, the notifier at the beginning of the process. So I would think in this case, it's something along the lines of just identifying a need for a new laptop, whether it's a new hire or or someone who needs a laptop replaced. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, that's correct, Brian. If I were to need to order new laptops, typically it's for new hires, computers that go out of date, or if we have one that malfunctioned. So that's typically where we first start, is just identifying.
Great. Okay, so let's have you walk through the process, and Adam, please jump in as you have things to add on this. But I think largely the process will flow starting from Cameron, moving to Adam, and then back. So, Cameron, what's the first thing you do once you've identified this need?
All right. So after I've identified the need, I typically will research potential laptops with the specifications that are needed in our department. I specifically like to look up the Mac laptops. They tend to work well with our applications and what we're using for what we're doing. So I'll research that. Then I'll dig, once I find the appropriate laptop, I'll start to research and look for supplier. Typically, I just go find about 2 or 3 different suppliers, look for the best price option. And then really after that, I just fill out a purchase requisition form. And I take that purchase requisition form with the computer information supplier, and I drop it off on Adam's desk, procurement. And
so let me stop you for a second there, Cam. And first of all, as I'm mapping this on the fly, please jump in if there's anything that's not representing exactly how you think it's flowing. So what kind of information are you capturing on this purchase requisition form?
So on the purchase requisition form, it'll be the specs of the laptop themselves, how many I'm needing to order for my department, the department I'm in, and then my supplier information from who I found the supplier. And that's typically what's filled out on the requisition form.
Cam, you mentioned MacBooks are preferred for you, the Apple computers. Can you tell me why? Because as a company, we would typically like to have, the PCs, the Windows environment's easier to use. They're a bit less expensive, and we have quite a few more options in sourcing them. Can you tell me what about MacBooks is helpful for you?
For us in our department, with the applications and things we use, we typically have better luck working with the MacBook platform. The lifespan of the computer seems to be better and works well with our employees, and it's more personal preference.
So is that lifespan, do you have data on that? And is that something that we're confident offsets the costs that necessarily increase? Because as Adam said, we have a higher price for those. So I guess it's just a question of, do we know if we're actually saving money based on that or not? Do we have any visibility into that?
I would have to look at, I would have to look at or ask Adam for the information from the last time we ordered the laptops that we used.
We don't really track that stuff. So,
okay.
You know, it's something that, from my perspective, that I have a budget that I have to manage, and that is a part of the conversation here with regard to particular laptops that go for one department or the other. Cam's department seems to want the more expensive laptops when everybody else is fine with the PCs. So just trying to figure out why it is we need those.
Okay. So noted that here is a pain point. We don't really have the visibility, and we're kind of flying blind in terms of making decisions on, are we buying the right laptops that are helping us? And you know, certainly I would think if there are very specific application needs that are only functioning on one platform or another, that would be something that's called out in the specs. But otherwise, you know, we may be able to look at streamlining this to be able to, you know, make better decisions for the organization. So we both comfortable with that. We have just a little more research to do to figure out what the best options are.
Can we also put on there that it's not just a lack of visibility in the lifespan versus initial cost, it's the difference in functionality between Apples and PCs.
Okay.
Excellent addition. I think if you look into that a little bit more, you'll see why I want the MacBooks versus the PCs for our department.
Okay. Well, it seems that's an area too. We should, if the paper form, does that have anything that's asking, so it's asking for the specs, but are there justifications for that? Is it identifying programs that are needed? Like how, does that have the level of depth we need to be able to make those decisions?
Not currently, no. And there isn't any policy in place that tells you what specific laptops you're supposed to use. I don't have a specific supplier I'm supposed to look for on my end.
Other than that, everybody else uses PCs.
We won't make this a debate on the Mac versus PC. Just know we need some data around that, right?
Yeah.
Agree to disagree.
Okay, so is the lack of space in the form to call out key needs? And sorry, I think there was another one on that, or is that
lack of like the supply
policies? Yeah,
policies in place for which suppliers we're supposed to be looking through.
Okay. Great.
Well, I'll figure out the supplier. I mean, it always helps when you have some identified for me, but I'll do my own research, and as part of the procurement department, I have relationships with some of those folks that might be able to get you a better deal.
Okay.
So is that the first step in your process, Adam? Or, well, let's call it out first. I imagine there's some steps of reviewing the form, but
yeah. So
a list of vetted out suppliers in your department?
I do. So glad that's helpful. But from this point, what will end up happening though is, you know, Cam will drop that paper off on my desk and put it in my inbox, and I'll get, you know, as part of the other things that I review, I'll review that in line with what comes. And once I get to it, my first step is to just kind of take a look at comparing the need against the requests. You know, we have a new hire in this case, and we don't have enough laptops. That's usually a pretty clean and clear cut. I take a close look at the specs and the number that we need, and I start to look for fits within my vendor network on what it is I can supply. You know, the MacBooks are usually a little bit more difficult for me, not only in that they're more expensive, but my network has fewer fewer people in it that sell MacBooks. So I tend to lean towards the PCs. I look at the specs and often am able to find a PC that fits those specs. And so I'll usually go down the route of identifying the vendor and then or create a purchase order in our system for these laptops in this case. And then that'll go through its approval process on our side to make sure that Cameron's department heads are aware of the need for laptops and that the spend is going to come out of their budget and their GL. And from there, once I have the approval process handled appropriately, which is usually by email, I will issue the purchase order to the vendor.
Okay. So one thing to note as you're watching here, obviously there's some stuff that's bumping up against each other. So I'll always tend to clean these maps up after the fact, but we want to make sure we're capturing things. And if you have, Adam, as I've been translating the things you've been saying into discrete boxes and steps here, let me know if anything's missed or not represented as it needs to be.
With the suppliers and selecting the laptop to purchase, I do work to match that with the specifications of the request, right? So Cameron has particular needs for software as well as performance and things like that. Sometimes he wants more desktop-oriented things. Sometimes he wants laptops. So it's, okay. In this case, we're speaking of laptops, but it doesn't mean that I couldn't get a request for a desktop as well that would go through the same process.
So Cameron, from your end, do you feel like you're ending up getting, and let's forget the Mac versus PC debate here for a minute too, but do you generally feel like you're getting the right machines that are matching what you need, or do you have some issues around this?
I mean, they work and get the job done typically, but sometimes we have issues with some of the applications that we use on the PCs. Might have to create workarounds to get some stuff done. I do know that I do have an issue because it seems like there's just a long period where I have no visibility into how long it's taking to get these laptops ordered anyways, regardless of whether it's a Mac or a PC. And, whether it's me knocking on the door or sending emails a lot, I have no clue. I might have a new employee stuck doing nothing because they're waiting on a laptop.
Adam, were you aware of this challenge that's happening within departments of not having those?
No, I mean, when I get the emails, I usually am able to find the purchase order request in my inbox, and I, if it's coming up soon or if it's urgent, I'll try to pull it up. But amongst the list of things that I have to do is order laptops for Cam. So
maybe that's something we're missing on our purchase requisition form then is priority levels. I mean, because I don't think I send you priority levels tagged in the headlines when I email you. So, and maybe some things aren't identified as priority then at that point and get an order fast enough.
Yeah, that's true. It would certainly help to know why you're ordering laptops other than just that you need these orders. So if we added that to the form request, that could probably help things. If it's a replacement, that might be a bit less urgent than a new hire, right? Unless the computer's completely broken. But if we're just looking for upgrades.
Right.
Okay. Great. So let's just close the loop on this process, work it to the end, I think, until at least the laptop is received and in front of the employee who needs it. And then we can circle back in terms of if we have any other pain points or opportunities we want to identify. So after submitting the PO to the vendor, we've got a period to wait here, and then laptop coming in, what's the process around that?
Well, when the laptop arrives, I usually get a notification that says that your order has been delivered. It's usually quite a long ways after when I'm actually invoiced for it, which is a pain point of mine because most of the time I get invoiced upon shipment as opposed to upon receipt. But I will, once I get the laptop, I'll look at the receipt, I'll look at the invoice, and I'll look at the purchase order to make sure that they all match. And then I'll let Cameron know that his computer or computers are waiting for him.
And pretty much from that point, I go and pick up the laptops from Adam, and then I just have to confirm them that they're the correct laptops. Because like we said before, I might put in a request for a MacBook with certain specs, but I might get a PC. And so at least the specifications of those laptops need to match or be somewhat similar.
So one thing today, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do as much as we could do in a deeper dive session would be to go a little further into some exception paths here. What if the laptop doesn't come in? What if it doesn't meet the specs? How do we follow up? And we're also not going into some of the follow-up processes like paying out the invoices and the accounts payable side of things. So, you know, for the purposes of this, we're just going to call this an endpoint around it without some of those other branching paths we might do on a deeper dive, and just say laptop available for use. Let's say for employee use. So let's make sure we've covered some good pain points here. Some of them we have some opportunities identified of what we're going to do around changing the form. Some of them we still need to follow up outside of this meeting. We're not going to solve the problems of necessarily looking into the cost and the lifespan now, and you know, challenges around vendors getting the invoices off sooner than the laptops are. Those aren't all here, and as I said, I'll be cleaning this up before providing. But any other thoughts on pain points? Any other opportunities to make this process better that either of you see?
You know, as we're talking about getting into a new system here, I'd like this process to all be electronic. And that way I can see something where I know how many purchase requisitions I have. In this case, you know, if we take Cameron's great idea of priority, I can also see that. The electronic approval process can be a little bit more well documented. That would be helpful for me as well, so that I know when the approvals aren't coming through. Because sometimes Cam follows up with me, it's sorry man, it's with your boss.
Right.
So go hound that guy.
Right.
You know, so
Okay.
those types of things, that level of visibility for sure.
Great. Yeah, and that's one, you know, there's different routes we might have in that. There may be some tools, whether it's some opportunities within Outlook, or whether it's ticketing systems if others in the organization are using them, or it might require a purchase of, it could be a pretty small scale purchase, or it might be able to be something rolled into a larger initiative. So this is one that I think we just have to spend some time outside doing some research into what's the way we can go ahead and convert this to an electronic process, and make sure we're not over engineering it, because it's not, you know, technology solves some of these problems and can address them, but some of them it looks like are ones we've been able to identify. Just cleaning up the process a bit will help. So, okay. Any other thoughts on pain points or opportunities before we wrap it up?
I would say, you know, we've identified too, with Adam having already a list of suppliers from his end, that it's not necessary for me to have to research suppliers. So we might be able to remove that. Oh, I didn't see that on there. So duplicative step.
Yep.
Okay,
No,
so perfect.
Yeah, but we're putting in, we can put that solution in suppliers, just
And
eliminate this step.
maybe you know, we should look at that and get a little bit more into detail on that, because yeah, I have suppliers that have laptops, but if Cam's looking for something that's a bit different, you know, being the if it's a marketing department that needs something a bit more advanced than just a MacBook, you know, whether it's maybe video equipment for making commercials or whatever that might be, I don't necessarily have a supplier for everything. So him having that starting point for me is it eliminates a good amount of work on my end if I don't have a supplier network. If I do have a supplier network, I'll use it. So
seems there might be some options here too. I'm just wondering if, Cam, you have employees starting who have similar needs, to maybe have some templates and some baselines that Adam can reference, and then be able to, aim to duplicate some of the same purchasing he's done. And maybe if that applies across some departments as well, there could be some bulk ordering opportunities.
Right. I also see an opportunity where we could maybe have an approval process or like a loop back to me when you've selected the laptop based on your supplier and your research, so we can kind of come to an agreement on what's being ordered. Maybe if I have options, because if I don't have the choice of the MacBook versus PC, then what PC I'm receiving, maybe if I have a couple options, that at least I could be a part of that decision for my department.
So maybe only if the laptop is not exactly what you've requested, then to have a step to loop it back.
Or other items in particular, because that could go for, like you said, any video cameras, hardware, anything that I might need.
Great. Okay, so I think that'll wrap it up for this session on the process map. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. And now kind of back to the video, to those of you watching this. So this was a brief illustration. The savings and opportunities identified out of this are just kind of small scale, but trying to show the types of things that can happen when you get people talking to each other and working on a process end to end. You don't just have procurement looking at it in a vacuum, and you don't just have the hiring manager filling out a form. You're getting people looking at these things together. And please note as well, this is, again, a simple example. It's also at a certain level of detail. As you go through process mapping, there are various reasons under which you're going to do it. Sometimes it's just ongoing maintenance of your processes. Sometimes it's because an area is ripe for improvement. Sometimes it's part of a bigger technology initiative. And even in those big initiatives, you're going to have different phases along the way of how this goes. So this exercise, while in structure and concept, will be very similar no matter what the circumstances. We'll see some differences depending. You could be mapping at very different levels and trying to get into some more detail. So again, just a flavor of what this can look like. How it would go about would really be specific to the project you have and the needs that you have. With that, I will give an opportunity if Adam or Cameron would like to add anything further around what they got out of this experience, or how it relates to what they've seen in process exercises in the past.
On my end, I'm good. I will say I'm actually a PC guy. As hard as that was.
The role of the Mac guy well.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think just process improvement in general, it works really well for organizations. You should always be looking for areas of where there's pain points that you can identify opportunities to clean up a process or make things more efficient and better. So it should be an ongoing effort, not just something you do on big initiatives. So
I'd also emphasize that it's good to have the cross-functional teams together, right? If Brian had gone and talked to Cameron and then come and talk to me, and then I've gone back to talk to Cameron, some of that conversation gets lost, particularly in the collaborative nature of, well, we can make these adjustments now. And that might help out quite a bit, as opposed to having to be dependent on technology in a way that says, well, let's just take Cameron's process and then plug it into Adam's and then have it spit back out to Cam. The level of the aha moments that come through other people seeing what it is that happens upstream and downstream is usually something that is worth the exercise in and of itself.
Right. Yeah, and something else to point out too, the complexity of a process and the interactions becomes much greater when you get more than two people engaged. Even in this simple example, we didn't even have an IT representative who you would have then had some more complex changes. And then if you get into very, very elaborate end-to-end business processes that might involve a dozen departments who are touching on each other, you're going to see that much more complexity and that much more benefit from getting people together and talk through. And they're going to take longer to work through those issues, but there's going to be a lot of value in doing so. So with that, that'll wrap it up for this video. We thank you for watching and following along with this, and see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.